Time to start dinner. Clouds are ominous. Don't hear any thunder yet. Still see some blue patches, so I'm all prepared to ship everything over to the tarp if need be, but I'd rather be out on the rock by the lake here rather than in the dark in the bush with the wet moss. So tonight I'll get the dehydrated dinner going in the cold water, and that'll be more efficient with fuel. I don't have to wait for it to get really hot before I put the food in. I'll show you what we got here. Okay. This is dried ground beef with dried mushrooms, dried olives, and dried onions in there. That's defatted. I dehydrate all that at home except for the onions, which I purchase at the bulk food store. That is a roll of dehydrated ragu tomato sauce that I do at home on the plastic, I think they call them fruit roll-up trays, but the liquid trays that you insert over the grate trays on the dehydrator. So that's a full circle, and then you fold it in half and you roll it up and it makes a cone. And then some fusilli pasta here. I won't add this right away. I'll get the tomato sauce and the ground beef and the dried veggies going first, and then put these in later. Tomato sauce. Oh, just a tip to save your teeth. You need to protect your bags from getting sand on them, because if you hold your food bag over your pot or kettle, sand grains can fall into it. So I'm using bare rock here. There still could be sand on it, so I get into the habit of brushing it off before I put the food bag over top. Don't want a cracked tooth on a canoe trip, especially when you're a long way away from getting out. Another tactic is find organic surfaces and put your food bags on the organic surfaces, and that way, in theory, there should be less chance of getting sand on the bags. And it's really important when everything's wet, because of course sand and debris sticks to the bags when it's wet. Same with a bottle bottom. This is olive oil. And I have that dish rag ready to wipe up the drips, so that, as I mentioned in the earlier video, so it doesn't get all slimed up with oil, which will then attract all kinds of debris. Mosquitoes are coming out. I thought I would get one trip in without having to wear bug dope. I haven't put the bug dope on so far. It was okay today, but the wind seems to be dying, the humidity is going up, and the bugs are coming out. stove is so quiet, sometimes you don't know if it's on or not. Okay, we got a rolling boil. So we'll put the simmer ring on here. I'm still learning how to guess what the setting is. I think the trick to fiddling with the simmer ring when it's really hot and having to use sticks and stuff to pry it and having no end of irritation is to maybe go with 2 simmer rings. If you're backpacking, the extra weight would be prohibitive, but canoeing, I think we can afford it. And that way you can always work with a cold simmer ring. So I'm still learning how to use this Trangia efficiently and effectively. But that looks like a nice simmer. I'll let this go for a couple more minutes and then I'll add the pasta in. In fact, I think I'll add the pasta in right now. So just a note, you can cook pasta like rice. I eyeballed the amount of water in there. I sort of know on the side of the pot, based on my proportions here, what the correct amount of water is. And pasta, just like rice, will absorb the water and cook in the water. So I don't need to cook a pasta in a separate pot and then drain it. Then I got 2 dirty pots, and I'm using more fuel because I'm heating 2 pots of water instead of 1, which wouldn't be a big issue on an open fire, but since I'm using an alcohol stove, fuel conservation is a concern because you can go crazy and use tons of alcohol in these stoves and be inefficient with them. And yes, the starch in the pasta will be in the water, but that's good because it thickens the sauce. That's actually a good simmer. There's a few bubbles happening there. That's just what I want. Okay, that's been simmering pretty good for a while. So I'll finish that off in the cozy. And this cozy thing, as I mentioned in the previous video, is new to me. I'm still experimenting with it. And I'll refill the Trangia. It's still on its first loading of fuel, but I gotta boil this pot of really cold water. This is a 1.9 liter pot, and I've got about that much water in it for hot drinks and hot dishwashing water. So I figure I got about 1.5 or 4 liters that I got to boil. Very cold water. So I'll take this simmering off. Yeah, there's still a fair bit of fuel there, but I'll snuff it and give it a refill after it cools. There we go. It's amazing how fast these things cool. I just refilled the Trangia. I forgot to mention that in the previous video I talked about these old Nalgene containers, which are just fantastic for fuel. The alcohol fuel I'm using is in Canada it's called methyl hydrate, and it's 99.9% pure methanol. So it's a really good fuel. There's no water in it. And you can get it in hardware stores all over Canada, often in the paint section for paint thinners and stuff, but it's also in the automobile section because I think they use it for gas line antifreeze as well. It's called methyl hydrate, but chemically it's pure methanol. Very poisonous, of course. Can't drink that stuff. Okay, this has been in the cozy for quite a while. Let's see what it looks like. Oh yeah, look at that. Ground beef, rehydrated, olive oil added to get the fat back in. You can see the dried sliced olives, and there's dried onions and dried mushrooms in there, now all rehydrated in a tomato sauce and olive oil, and I added some garlic too. Alright, time to tear into this. I really like these deep dish lids with the fold out handles. They make an excellent eating dish. This is very hot, so I only need a little bit of time to let it cool. I've shown in winter, that's good. I've shown in winter how, with a hole in the ice, these are good dippers to get the slush out of the ice hole and then dip water to put in the pots. And I've shown down on the waterfront here how when it's very shallow, and the closer you get to the bottom, the more suspended sediment there might be. So you can use these dippers to sort of clear, and there's pollen and insects, dead insects and things on the water. So you can kind of clear the surface of the water. There's a film often on there, and then scoop out the water and dip it into the pot. So I just can't say enough about how I like this pot design with deep dish lids that have multiple functions. A pot set with just flat lids, really flat, it just seems like the lid, it's extra weight and it's not really doing anything other than keeping steam in when you're trying to boil water. Yes, these are extra weight. For sure they're extra weight, so I understand that. But they're multifunction. A lid would have to be washed anyway because it has the food smells on it. So I don't have to get a bowl dirty. So I've got the lid here as a bowl. Oh, I think this is my favorite all-time camping meal, Dehydrated. It always turns out fantastic. Dinner was excellent. Cheers. Those are the spring peepers calling. And they don't spend their time out in the lake because they can get eaten by fish, because they're really small. Their tadpoles are really small, so they're back in the swamps, and there's pools of water there in the high water in the spring, so the lake is actually back flooded into these shoreline swamps, and there's little embayments, and there's also back in the bush there's swampy pools, but especially along the lake there's these back swampy areas that are flooded right now, and that's where the spring peepers and the wood frogs are spend a lot of their time, because they don't like to be in the same water as fish, because the fish just gobble them up.